So today I want to talk about forward and backward walking, how they differ from one another and how they're similar, and how you can incorporate backward walking technique in the right way so you can optimize some of those benefits. If you're new to the channel, I'm Dr. Todd Martin, creator of The Walking Code. A recent commenter asked me, do I really need to focus on my abs, my hips, my pelvis, my quads, and my feet all at the same time when I'm walking? Why is walking so hard? And I want to answer that question using the walking code and in the context of forward and backward walking, because it's a great question. And the answer is walking is a little bit hard. Humans are the only animals out there that walk on two legs in a sustained fashion, and that has benefits and negative trade-offs. The benefits can include having our arms free to use tools and manipulate our environment in ways that four-legged animals cannot. And walking on two legs also helped profoundly with the development of the human brain. But the trade-offs include a high risk of falling, which animals that walk on four legs do not have, and also high risk of misalignment of the spine and other joints that can cause early wear and tear on the spine and joints that can lead to dysfunction and pain. But even though walking on two legs is a little bit difficult, it is not something that we can't learn to do optimally with a little bit of focus. For those of you who are interested in going deep on my content, present and past, all of my former and recent YouTube videos are now available on my website in the Walking Code archive, all categorized in a way that's easy for you to find what you're looking for. For those of you interested, at the end of this video, after you've finished watching the whole thing, jump over there to sign up. The first 50 people who sign up for the Walking Code archive are going to have that for free. After the first 50, there's going to be a nominal fee to subscribe to the Walking Code archive. On that archive, I'm going to have all of my current and past content, and additionally, I'm going to have expanded versions of the videos, which sometimes I have to edit down for the purposes of YouTube. As humans, we have essentially two steering wheels and then a system of power. Our steering wheels are in the abdomen. The upper abdomen, which rotates around to the left or to the right, and then the lower abdomen, which rotates around to the left or to the right. These two steering wheels, one on top of the other, can either turn in the same direction at the same time, or they can turn in opposite directions at the same time, creating a variety of different movements in conjunction with the power which comes from our hips, either hip flexion from the muscles in the front of the hips or hip extension from the muscles in the back of the hips, primarily the gluteus maximus. So these two elements of direction on top of the two elements of power, flexion or extension, combine to create all of the options that we have for movement. And when you put them together, there's only 8 functional patterns that we have to use. When we combine clockwise or counterclockwise rotation of the upper part of the waist, clockwise or counterclockwise rotation from the lower part of the waist, and then either hip flexion or hip extension creating the power, it comes together presenting us with 8 patterns. That's not a lot if we're trying to move optimally, and we can focus on learning those 8 patterns, which are part of the walking code. Now, let's get into the walking forward and backward, because this is where it becomes really fascinating. To keep this simple, I'm going to focus in on just walking forward and backward and not turning. I'm going to do this on level ground and also walking up the stairs, forward and backward. What you'll find if you learn how to control the core is that when we're moving forwards, the upper waist rotation is always going to be going towards the side of the swing leg. The leg that is going to swing forward I'm always turning the upper waist towards that leg. So left upper waist going with the right leg swinging forward. And then to prepare to swing the left leg forward, I begin turning the upper waist to the left, preparing that step going forward. When we move backwards, we're using the exact opposite rotation. So I'm going to be turning the upper waist in the direction of the standing leg when I move backward, not the swing leg. So if I'm going backwards with a right standing leg, I'm turning the upper waist forward and around on the left. So we're never thinking of pulling backwards. It's always a forward rotation, but it's counterclockwise or clockwise. When the standing leg is the right leg, I'm going to turn forward and clockwise with the upper waist. And then I'm going to turn forward and counterclockwise when the left leg is the standing leg. That's going to make me go backward. I can reverse directions, placing the left heel by going forward on the left and clockwise, and then placing the right heel by going forward and counterclockwise. So that's how it works. The lower abs root the leg to the ground by turning backward. The leg that is going to be on the ground, the lower abs are always turning towards that leg to root it to the ground. And then we combine that with the upper waist rotation, turning towards that leg to go backwards, or turning away from that leg to go forward. To get this down really fluidly, we have to break the movements up into 3 phases. One is the placement of the foot, then the shifting of the weight, and then the swinging through. So 3 phases, whether we're going forward or backward. When we go forward, we're using the rotation of the waist to place the heel, and then we begin using the rotation of the lower portion of the waist to shift the body forward, and then we use the hip power to pull through or swing through. Then we change to the other side with rotation of the upper waist on the other side. The first exercise I want you to try is taking a single step backward, beginning with one foot on the ground behind you and the other foot forward. And I want you to place one hand on your upper waist, the hand opposite the rear leg, and one hand on your lower waist. And I want you to practice turning both of those elements of the waist toward that rear leg and let the weight shift back towards that leg. And then once you get to this position, continue that rotation and then take a step backward. Taking the step backward requires activating the hip flexor on this leg. When we're doing this motion, shifting back, we're using the hip flexors on the forward leg, so my left leg, powering the motion until I get to this position. To step through, I have to change the power from my left leg to my right leg, flexing the hip, and that's going to pull everything through into a backward step. So practice that a few times. Clockwise rotation, and then power from the hip to step backward. Now, when we walk backward, it's quite easy to see that this is a hip flexion activity because the leg is going in front of the body, so clearly that appears to be hip flexion. When we walk forward, we're using the same power, but it's harder to visualize that as a hip flexion activity because the leg is going behind the body. But what I'll tell you is that the difference is not in the power, it's only in the direction from the upper waist. So that is hip flexion, taking us backward, rotating everything toward the standing leg. From this position, rotate the upper waist back in the other direction and you're going to step forward. You don't have to change to hip extension to do that. It's simply the rotation of the waist that is going to create either backward or forward. That is the direction. The power is hip flexion the whole time. After we do the backward step, the foot is not going to contact the ground immediately if you're using proper posture. The foot is going to end in the air, or a slight toe hover, which is similar to what I describe in other videos as the heel hover. When we walk forward, there's a slight heel hover, then we change directions of the upper waist to place the heel. When we move backward, we do the reverse. We change the direction of the upper waist to place the ball. After the step, I turn back to the left to place the ball of the left foot. Shift the weight, rotating everything to the left, and then power with the left hip to swing through. And then I change direction. When we walk backward in that fashion, it's going to be a smooth walk that looks like the exact reverse of a forward walk. Instead of what most people do when walking backward is they kind of just fall backward like that. What we want to do to improve our coordination is walk backward with the same rotation that we would do if we were walking forward. It's just rotating in the opposite direction. So forward, and then backward. Both of these walks, forward and backwards, are powered by hip flexion. They're also always powered by forward rotation of the waist, not backward. You'll understand that by looking at the arms. A lot of people think that when we're walking forward, we're pumping the arms to get momentum. When we walk backward with correct technique, we'll see that is not the case, because as we move backward, the arms are still going forward. And so that wouldn't make sense if the arms were powering the movement. The arms are not swinging backward to power the backward movement. It's all forward rotation. And understanding that will help with your balance, because when people try to pull backward like this, when they're standing or walking or turning around, they're going to be more prone to fall backward than if we are always having our energy forward, even if we're walking backward, like the mime walking against the wind. Now I'm going to take the steps here, and we're going to do the same thing using the rotation of the core. The difference is when we're walking up steps, we have to use our glutes to power the movement up. So when I'm going up the steps, I'm going to push with the glutes of the rear leg, still turning the upper waist towards that rear leg. And when I get to this position, now I can power with the glutes of the standing leg, place the heel using the root of the lower abs. I go into more detail in that in some of my walking upstairs videos, which you can reference after this one. And then to move up to the next step, I rotate again towards the swing leg, power with the hip extension. Once I'm up at the top of the step, extending from the hip, now I have to use hip flexion to pull forward. I'm going to now go up the stairs backward, and we're going to do the exact opposite motion. It's still the lower abs that are going to root the leg to the step, but as I push from my left hip, I'm going to rotate forward on the left and towards the standing leg. That's going to push me up onto the step in the opposite way from when I was going forward. So I'm turning the upper waist towards the standing leg. Now I'm going to push with the glutes to push the body up, but while turning the upper waist towards that standing leg. It's going to cause me to rise backwards. Again, I'm going to push off the left leg, then the right leg. And then I use the lower abs to turn and place the foot on the next step. Then I'm going to push off from the right hip, turning the upper waist to the left, and then the left hip as I push up. And so you'll notice as I push up with the glutes, with extension, I'm pushing myself up and backward, not up and forward. When we are walking up the stairs, we push up and forward. So again, this is emphasizing that forward and back aren't a matter of hip extension versus hip flexion. Forward and back are a matter of turning toward the standing leg or turning away from the standing leg. So go out there and practice forward and backward walking so you can feel the difference between the core rotation and how they differ from one another. Now, I recommend not doing a lot of backward walking in areas where you're going to be unsafe. I also recommend using backward walking as a practice like I did here, taking several steps in a safe manner, not going out for a walk doing backward walking. I don't think that's a practical way to do it. I think it's much more practical to just practice doing the movements so you understand how your core works. That's going to improve your balance and your coordination. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you've clicked that like button, and I'll see you in the next one.